It is no longer a weapon, no longer a patrol vessel, no longer a machine of war. It is now an object awaiting disassembly. Even in decay, a submarine of this scale demands respect. Every inch of its weight must be understood before a single section can move. But nothing here is random. Before cutting begins, the submarine must be stabilized, aligned, and secured with exacting control. Its hull, once cutting through deep water with absolute purpose, is now scarred by corrosion.
The story begins in a place few people ever see. A vast open-air industrial graveyard where giants of the sea are reduced to memory.
Among them rests a vessel once built to disappear with oceans.
The hull settles into place, dust rises, machinery locks in, and the dismantling process truly begins.
It is no longer a weapon, no longer a patrol vessel, no longer a machine of war. It is now an object awaiting disassembly. But nothing here is random. Before cutting begins, the submarine must be stabilized, aligned, and secured with exacting control. Even in decay, a submarine of this scale demands respect. Every inch of its weight must be understood before a single section can move.
The hull settles into place, dust rises, machinery locks in, and the dismantling process truly begins.
But before any cutting can happen, the most sensitive stage must come first: the removal of hazardous and nuclear-related material.
At this stage, speed means nothing. Every motion is slow, deliberate, and controlled.
Pumps are connected to lines once used for cooling, lubrication, and support systems, pathways that must now be emptied with absolute care. This is the most delicate phase of the operation, where every reading matters, and every transfer must be documented. Nothing leaves this submarine without measurement. Nothing is touched without verification. Hazardous fluids are removed first: oils, residues, coolants, and anything that cannot be allowed to spill, burn, or remain trapped inside. Nothing leaves this submarine without measurement. Nothing is touched without verification. Every removal is tracked. Every component has a destination. Every transfer is checked before the next one begins. Anything hazardous is transferred directly into shielded containment, designed to isolate it from workers, weather, and the wider yard.
These are not ordinary tools. They're precision machines built for environments where error is unacceptable.
This phase can take days, sometimes weeks. Here, patience is not delay. It is safety. Where risk intensifies, robotic systems take the lead, designed to operate where direct human contact must be minimized. This is where the human touch becomes essential. Navigation systems, communications units, and control hardware must be disconnected one by one. Once the highest risk material is handled, crews move deeper into the vessel's remaining chemical systems. Hazardous removal does not end with the reactor zone. Oils, toxins, residues, and legacy insulation all have to go.
The threat is reduced. The hull is assessed. And now, at last, the real dismantling can begin.
Asbestos, toxic residues, degraded insulation, none of it can be left behind for the cutting crews that follow. Each component is cataloged, salvaged if possible, and stripped away from the shell that once carried it. The vessel is not simply drained. It is mapped, cleared, and progressively made safe, one compartment at a time. As systems come out, the vessel begins to look less like a submarine and more like a hollowed industrial carcass. Inside, the vessel is tight, layered, and worn by decades. Rust stains the walls, paint peels.
The threat is reduced. The hull is assessed. And now, at last, the real dismantling can begin.
Inside, the vessel is tight, layered, and worn by decades. Rust stains the walls, paint peels. This is where the human touch becomes essential. Navigation systems, communications units, and control hardware must be disconnected one by one. Each component is cataloged, salvaged if possible, and stripped away from the shell that once carried it. Asbestos, toxic residues, degraded insulation, none of it can be left behind for the cutting crews that follow. As systems come out, the vessel begins to look less like a submarine and more like a hollowed industrial carcass. Wiring is stripped in long bundles: copper, insulation, connectors, wirgens, separated not as history, but as recoverable material. Everything is documented. Everything is sealed. Everything is tracked. Anything still useful is identified, logged, and preserved. Nothing simply disappears into the yard. Anything still useful is identified, logged, and preserved. Nothing simply disappears into the yard.
As more is removed, the interior starts to resemble a skeleton of systems rather than a functioning vessel. The work moves compartment by compartment, always outward, from hidden machinery toward the open yard.
Copper, steel, aluminum, the submarine begins to lose its identity and become raw material.
Anything that still holds value is set aside. Pumps, valves, fittings, hardware that once served a vessel can sometimes serve again.
And what remains, increasingly, is not a submarine cubby, but a hollow steel shell.
With the systems gone, the most dramatic phase can begin, cutting the structure itself apart.
Hold it steady! Easy!
In spaces this tight, even a modest extraction becomes a choreography of inches.
Panels that once guided navigation, communication, and survival are disconnected in silence, then carried away like any other component.
Inside, there is no room for spectacle, only cramped labor, old steel, and the methodical removal of what remains. Hydraulic lines, conduits, and aging service systems come next, fragile, corroded, and still demanding care.
Little by little, the dark interior yields to daylight as the submarine starts to empty itself into the yard.
Nothing is yanked free. Nothing is rushed. Every line still attached is another risk to manage.
Every subsystem has to be cleared before the bigger removals can begin.
This is dismantling at human scale to bay. Grip, lift, pivot, clear the corner, and move. Steady, steady.
Every section now has to be placed, aligned, and prepared for its own next stage of reduction.
Once this section is moved away, the submarine no longer exists as a single complete structure.
Now the focus shifts to handling, moving, staging, and organizing the pieces that once formed the submarine's body.
The scale is immense, but the margin for error is small.
Then come the piping networks, hundreds of interlocked tubes that once carried fluids through every essential system on board.
Once outside, every assembly becomes something measurable: salvaged hardware, recyclable material, or controlled waste. Once outside, every assembly becomes something measurable: salvaged hardware, recyclable material, or controlled waste.
Handled as a sealed unit, it is lifted with the utmost care, not opened, not broken apart, but removed intact for specialized processing.
Each removed section is sorted not by memory, but by metal, shape, and reuse value.
Once freed, each section is moved immediately, not as wreckage, but as a load with weight, balance, and risk. Next come the sonar and navigation systems, once responsible for reading the unseen world beyond the hull.
The cut edges reveal just how much steel this vessel carried, layered, heavy, and built for pressures most ships never face.
What once belonged to one integrated machine now leaves as isolated pieces, each with its own record and destination.
The dismantling yard transforms into a sorting floor for giant steel anatomy.
The reactor compartment, now fully deactivated, is treated differently from everything else. Some systems are too heavy for one crew alone. Old battery banks and dense electrical assemblies have to be extracted with coordinated lifting. Every section weighs tons, yet each one must be guided into place with a level of precision more often associated with assembly than demolition. Now the submarine is truly being divided. Large sections begin to separate, each one cut, supported, and lifted clear.
With each section lowered onto reinforced supports, the submarine loses another part of itself.
The more the crews remove, the more the submarine loses what made it function.
The vessel that once moved unseen beneath the sea has been reduced to categories, weights, and stacks.
Valves are removed. Joints are separated. Corroded sections are handled with care despite their condition.
Their complexity is still visible, even now, in portions, nested mouths, layered housings, cables, and old metal.
The submarine is gone. In its place, ordered metal, measured risk, and the
Copper, aluminum, steel. The ship is beginning to separate itself by value.
Inside a submarine, removal is never just lifting. It is guiding, rotating, clearing, and making space where almost none exists.
The cut cannot simply be brutal. It has to remain balanced, coordinated, and structurally understood at every moment.
Large hull sections do not break free in one pass. They are released progressively, with every cut matched by structural support.
As the steel gives way, the cranes begin to take the weight.
This is where experience matters, knowing when to keep cutting, when to hold the load, and when to stop.
With the outer sections coming away, attention turns to the most controlled removal of all.
What remains is no longer a vessel. It is a collection of sections waiting to become something else. Then the process repeats. Mark, brace, cut, clear.
At this stage, the vessel no longer exists as one form. It is becoming a field of massive sections.
At this moment, every remaining attachment matters. Cut too fast and control is lost.
What was once sealed against ocean pressure now opens under showers of molten metal.
Production follows handling. What was once a hull section becomes cuttable stock.
Each pass follows the marked path, turning one giant shell into controlled cylindrical segments.
This is no longer simple dismantling. It is controlled division. Cut, support, check the load, and continue.
What was once hidden beneath ocean pressure is now exposed to light, air, and the machinery of the yard.
Curves become panels. Compartments become fragments. The vessel's architecture is being edited out of existence.
Even at the end, people remain at the center of the process, watching every movement, every lift, every load.
This is how a legend disappears in a recycling yard. Not all at once, but piece by piece, until history gives way to steel again.
The line between careful removal and forceful cutting grows thinner the deeper the crews go.
Even this final violence is controlled. Feed rate, spark load, loose wire risk, and machine balance all watched in real time.
3, 2, 1, mark!
Now, heavy industry takes over.
Shredders roar to life, tearing through smaller components with relentless force.
Once the line is deep enough, the submarine stops being one body and starts becoming sections waiting to part. Where bolts and brackets no longer cooperate, heat takes over.
What enters the yard as history leaves as feedstock.
Where the hull grows tougher or more layered, oxy-fuel cutting takes over, slower, louder, and brutally effective.
Steel is separated from copper, copper from aluminum. Each pile represents not a compartment, but a category.
What was once a submarine hull now lands as recyclable steel, ready for another industrial life. Workers mark the hull with exact cut lines. Every separation point is chosen to preserve control, balance, and safety.
These lines determine where history ends
and manageable sections begin.
The yard transforms once again. Where there were hull sections, there are now managed piles of recoverable metal.
Plasma torches flare to life, slicing into naval-grade steel with heat intense enough to turn structure into sparks.
At this point, the submarine's identity is no longer visible. Only processed material remains.
What enters as pipes, panels, and fittings exits as shredded metal. Stripped of form, stripped of function, stripped of memory.
For all its size, all its power, and all its history, the end comes the same way.
And then comes the phase that leaves almost nothing recognizable behind.
The final transformation is not from war machine to ruin, but from machine to resource.